there, thanks for joining me today. My name's Jo and I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator from the UK. Today we're going to have a little bit of a fun with our Monday mashup. I like to mix up sets, as you know, but I'm actually mixing up 4 today. I'm only using little elements of each, but just to give you an idea, I'm going to be using this sort of background, which is actually the background of the poppy, which you'll see will make sense in a moment. I'm also using Jar of Flowers, which I'm just using the top of the jar here, and I'm also using the punch that coordinates with these jars. I'm using this little bird here and this little blossom just from this end of the Free as a Bird set. And then I'm also using the greeting from It's a Good Man. So this is It's Your Day, that's the one I'm going to be using. So there's 4 sets, but you can mix up any sets you want to get the same sort of effect. This is really just a bit of fun. So here is our card we'll be making today. Now, here in the UK, it's Friday night at the moment, but on this Sunday, which will be the day before you see the video, is actually Father's Day. And although sadly my father's no longer with us, but I do have a husband and we do have fur babies, so he always gets a card from the fur babies. So this is just a little bit of fun because he absolutely loves feeding the birds. So all over our garden we have bird feeders of different types, and I just thought it'd be really fun just to incorporate some of the bird seed. So I've stolen some of his bird seed, which he doesn't know about at the moment, but he will do come Sunday. So this is the card we're making. So you're going to need a card base. So this is, I'm using Crumb Cake, and this is a standard C6 card, which is 21 centimetres across by 14.85, and it's scored at 10.5 to give us our card base. I've then got a piece of Evening Evergreen, which is this beautiful new dark green that we have. This is one of our new in colours. And this is 2 centimetres shorter than our card front. So if you're using Imperial, you can just adapt your layers accordingly. And this one measures 12.85 by 8.5. And then I have a piece of basic white, which is 8 centimetres by 12.35. So it's just that little bit smaller to give us our border. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is to take the jar punch. So this is the jar punch here, and I want to actually punch it upside down. So I'm going off to this this side here very slightly, and I'm popping it into my punch as far as I can reach, and then just punching out my jar. So we don't need the jar, but we might use that for our stamping a little bit later. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to do was to create some sort of fun little clouds, really. So I'm using the stamp from the poppies, as I say, and Pool Party. But I do want to stamp off because it's quite dark in first generation. So I'm just stamping, inking, stamping off, and then I'm just randomly stamping it in the background. And I'm not putting too much pressure down either because I don't want it to be too dark. So I'm just sort of doing a mixture of clouds in the background. It's just to give the effect. It's obviously not clouds, but it just gives that effect that we're looking at the sky. So that is the start of our actual background. Okay, so the next thing I need to do is to take one of our jars. So these are the little jar pieces, so I'm just going to peel one of those off. Okay, now if you haven't used these before, these have got sticky either side, so we can pop this in and it will stick to the background, and then we've got sticky on the back that we can put a back onto it just to make sure the pieces don't fall out. But the first thing I want to do is to create some little holes in the top of it here. So I'm just using a pokey tool and just very carefully making 2 little holes. Okay, now I'm going to take a piece of our linen thread. You don't need too much. This is going to make the hanger of our top here. So I'm going to feed the thread through the hole, if I've made them large enough. Yes, I have. And I'm just going to tie some little knots inside. So I just basically need them small enough that they're not going to fall through the holes. Okay, I'm just going to feed that one back through. And then I just need to judge roughly how long I want it and where I want my knot to be. So I'm going to pull it all the way through, and then I'm just going to tie it quite close to the edge, but not too close, because I want a little bit to hang. That should do it, I should think. Yeah, that would be sufficient. So I'm just going to trim that off. So that is our little hanger. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is to make these little pieces here, which is what our actual tray feeds from. So I'm just using a little scrap of, this is soft suede, and I'm just going to cut a really thin strip of card. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to attach this onto my card so that I can see roughly where my little feeder is going to be. So I don't mind giving it a little bit extra. I'm going to just cut that in half. And then you need the tiniest little bit of glue. Just be really careful with this because you don't want it to come through. Okay, so I'm going to stick one either side. And just wipe any excess that happens to come out the edge. Okay, so now that I've done that, I'm just going to trim these from the inside to take those excess pieces away. Okay, so now that I've done that, if you have got any excess glue and you've got a glue remover, I recommend you use it now. And then what I'm going to do is to take this part of my jar away. So this is the top section. Now the only bit I need to be careful of is my string piece. Okay, so just be careful as you pop it on, just to make sure that your thread is not caught up. Okay, so that's my little hanger done. So the next thing I want to do is to actually fill this with some feed. So I've got some birdseed here, so I'm just going to pop some of that into there. I don't want too much, I just want enough to be able to rattle around a little bit. And I'm just going to take a scrap of white card, which I'm going to stick over the back of this. So I'm not measuring it, as you can see, I'm just literally cutting a scrap. And then I'm just going to pop it over the top like so. Okay, so you can see now that's our bird seed in there. As I say, I didn't want to fill it too much because I find that, you know, then it doesn't rattle around as much, and I've done slightly less in this one, but you know, it doesn't matter. Okay, so now that we've done that, I'm going to be using that jar top we talked about, and I'm going to stamp this one into Evening Evergreen. So this is one of our new in colours. As I say, it's absolutely beautiful. It's so deep, it's going to be absolutely gorgeous for Christmas. Okay, and I'm just going to cut that out. I think we do have some dies for these, if I recall, but I could be wrong, so I'm just going to cut it out by hand because it's nice and simple. Okay, so that's going to be our little feeder there. So the next thing I need to do is to do our little bird. So again, I've just got a piece of scrap basic white, and I'm using the bird stamp from the Free as a Bird, and I want this bird here and this little blossom here. So I don't need to stamp the whole thing up. And I'm going to be doing this in Stays On purely because I might use some water, but I'm going to show you a little trick as well. So So we're going to cut this out, so I'm not worried about this little guy here. So what I'm going to use is actually my Winker Stella. Now, this isn't what it's designed for, but it actually does make a really, really pretty sort of paintbrush, really. So I'm using Evening Evergreen, which will be my leaves. I'm using a little bit of Pacific Point, So Saffron, and then finally a little bit of Soft Suede. Now I'm using these colours to recreate sort of a blue tip. We get a lot of blue tips in our garden. In fact, we have a feeder that sits in our kitchen window, and it's really lovely to watch them sort of in there. So I'm going to start off, the other colour I'm going to use for my blossom is a little bit of our new colour Polished Pink, which is also really beautiful. So I'm actually going to start with that. And I'm using it as a paintbrush. Now, what happens is the colour intensifies with the first layer of colour that you put down, and then it softens as you go to the edges, so you get a natural shade in. So it's a really nice sort of quick way to obtain some nice shading. So what I did there was just cleared my brush just to remove any of that pink that was left, and I'm going to do the leaves. Now you can see instantly as I do these leaves, they start dark at the centre, and then as I wiggle my brush out, you can see that it lightens out, so it gives you that automatic sort of shading, and it's really achievable really quickly, which is really nice. I'm then going to start on to my blue tip. I'm just going to mix that colour out a little bit because it can be quite sort of stark Pacific Point. And I'm using a little bit of artistic license here. Of course, this isn't exact colours, and it also isn't the exact sort of positioning of the colours, if you know what I mean, but it just gives it that nice sort of effect. Okay, I'm just going to add some So Saffron. And then I'm also going to add a little bit of Soft Suede, because obviously it's not all blue and yellow. There is sort of shading of soft suede or browns within the bird. And clean that brush, get some yellow just to do his beak. Okay. So you can add a little bit more colour. It's also a little bit more forgiving than water. If you're using watercolour on our basic white card, then it's not really designed for it, so it can pucker if you're not too careful. So this is a good way to sort of mix those colours. Okay, so now that I've done that, I'm just going to wipe my desk very quickly. So now what I need to do is just to cut these out. But what I'm going to do is actually leave them for a moment just to dry off. They won't take many minutes. It's just a good way to ensure that they're absolutely dry, and we can start putting the other elements together. So the first thing I want to do is to stick my actual base piece onto my Evening Evergreen layer. And I'm using just glue and not dimensionals for this, because we've obviously already got quite a lot of dimension from our jar. Okay, and I'm just going to stick that onto my card front because I'm quite happy with that. Okay, so we're just going to make sure that's all nicely stuck down. I'm not going to stick my jar lid on, which is going to be my little feeding post, because I need to position it once I've actually cut my bird out. So in fact, what I'll do next, give that a few extra minutes, I will show you the branches. So I've already pre-cut these just so that you can see them already done. And these are taken from our iconic dies. Now these are a really good set of dies which have lots of sort of elements in it that are really useful. So we've got some flowers, some leaves, larger flowers, some ferns, some toadstools, there's a little bird, there's even a little bumblebee as well. So it's a really nice sort of mix, but this is the little branch that I used here. And what I'm going to do is just add a little bit of shading onto my branch. Now what I'm doing is I'm using colour on colour. So this is soft suede going on to soft suede. And I'm just doing little bits where shadows might appear. You don't have to be too precise because it's just adding that little bit of depth really. You could, of course, cut these in white and then colour them as you wish. I just thought this was a nice, quick way to actually add some shading. And I've got an evening evergreen pen, which again, I'm just quickly colouring over all the leaves. I've used evening evergreen because it's obviously very dark, so it instantly covers those areas for me. Okay, so just get the desk a quick wipe. And then what I'm going to do is to cut out my little blossom and also my little bird. I love how we can just use all our sets together. So don't ever be sort of think that you only use the set with what's in it. You can mix and match as much as you like. Some really lovely sets that we have that just coordinate so nicely together. And sometimes there's sets that you don't even think would work together, but actually little elements, just like the little flower there, just adds just that little something. So I've also got these little legs here, which I'm going to be really careful, but I'm giving myself plenty of white border so that I don't snip them off. So it's quite important that you allow this to dry, because if you don't, then you run the risk of actually ripping the paper. So just make sure that you give it enough time just to dry off. Ideally this could have had a little bit longer, if I'm honest, but it's fine. I'm being very careful. Okay, so that is our little bird. Now what I want to do is I'm just going to attach my bird to my feeding tray, and I'm just going to do that by adding a little dot of glue just on both of his feet. And I'm going to position him just on the very edge, so I know that he's secure. And then with the flower, I'm just going to pop that onto the corner like so. But I want to attach this using 3D foam because I want it to stand out a little bit. So that's our dimensionals. We always used to refer to it as 3D foam, so it's a difficult habit to get out of. So I'm going to put a whole one onto the back of my bird, and then I'm going to cut a piece of the edge strip to use on the actual lid. Okay, so I can now position this where I want to, knowing that my my bird is not going to be hidden sort of away. Okay, so that's him onto there. So the next thing I did was to add the little branches. Now you do need to be careful when you're applying glue to these, because they do have little sort of gaps in them. So just be careful. And I tend to use like little dots of glue rather than a whole load of glue. It's very light, so it's not going to. Okay, so this one I just want to tuck underneath, and I'm going to run this one to the edge of the white section. Okay, and I'm just going to do the same again. I'm just going to take some little dots. And this time I want to try and incorporate my actual thread if I can. I struggled in the other one and I wasn't able to do this, so I'm just going to tuck this under, being careful, trying not to get any glue anywhere I don't want it. There we go. So I've just managed to feed that through that time, and I'm just going to stick it up to the top of my card. I'll rearrange that thread in a second, and off to that edge. So I'm just going to rearrange the thread now so it looks like it's hanging properly. There we go. And this little bit just on the edge here, I'm just going to turn my card over, and then I can just take my scissors and snip that off. So just make sure that that's all stuck down. If you do get a little leakage of glue like I've got here, I tend to use the edge of my scissors, and whilst it's still sort of wet, you can kind of pick it away. So don't worry too much if you do get a little leakage. Okay, and then finally I added my greeting. Now I have pre-done this just to save a little bit of time. So this is the from the A Good Man stamp, as I say, and I've stamped it in Versamark, and I've used white embossing powder, and then I've actually used this die here from the Tasteful Labels dies. So this is I've obviously sort of cut off the end of it, and we're going to cut a little bit more off in a moment, you'll see. So this is going to pop down here. So what I want to do is I'm just going to hold it in place, and then you could either run it off the edge of the card, actually that would be quite nice, or what I did with the other one was I just made a little pencil mark and then cut it straight across. But actually I think I will run this off the page. I think it will look a little bit different. Whoops, got a little bit of glue stuck to my thumb and it's picking up everything. So I'm just going to move this down a little bit. I'm going to have it so it's sort of there-ish. And again, I'm just going to flip my card over and then just remove any excess from that bottom. And I can just make sure that it sticks down properly. So there you go. So that's my fun little Father's Day card. As I say, this is from our fur babies, so I know he'll love it because he'll find the funny side of it. So it was just a little bit of fun, but I thought it would be fun to share with you too, so you can see a different way that we can use our jars, not necessarily for their intended purpose, shall we say. So I hope you like that, and thank you for joining me, and I will see you again next week. Take care. Bye.